out for you. And for me, I'm working pen and paper, drawing it up like I've done for so many years, works for me. Again, you may want to go there, but here again, these are just some extra wedges from some other pieces that I've done. You can see that the lengths and everything are different on them, or the widths, I'll call it. Your length will be the widest part of the angle. That will be your outer wall going around. Am I making sense? Okay, now when it gets to these and cutting them and getting the right angles, that's where you'll get into the wedges. On that first sheet, you will see that one of the resources was Jerry Bennett, and his website is SegEasy. He's where I buy these. He has them in every size you want. I think he has 13 or 14 different sizes or more. Okay, and he makes and sells these. They're pre-made. This one is made, and I've highlighted it. It's a 24-piece ring, and that's cut at a 15-degree angle. The 32, that is cut at an 11.25 degree angle. 48, if you want to get into 48s, 7.5 degrees. And then the 16 is probably the most common because I do all of my beads of courage. In fact, both of these are destined to be beads of courage. It's a 22.5 degree angle. So I just bought what I thought I would use. He sells these on his website. They're 13 bucks a piece. You got a laser or whatever, you may be able to make your own. There are people out there that are using their table saws to cut with. Some are using band saws to cut with. The Incra guides, sleds are pretty accurate, so you might even cut them with that. Rockler sells a piece that fits over yours that has got the different angles on it. Some of the reviews I've read on that, I found that it might not be the best way to go, but this was my choice. Also, what you're going to need, and here again, you can buy them, is your sleds to cut with. And basically what you're going to do with this, if you're using the wedges, is put whatever wedge you've got, line it up, tighten it up, and now that sets your angle. And when I'm using, and here again, this is my portable table saw, right? Put some MDF together. It's going to ride in the miter sled, and as I put my wood up, here's my stock guide that I use to measure my length. What I've done with this one, when it is riding in my table saw, when it is riding in the second slot, can y'all see this okay from back there? Or Tim, camera angle
up there.
getting it good up on TV? What I've done is, and here again, instructions for building these things are right there on the SegEasy website. There's a link to go to it. When my sled or my sizing, when it's closed all the way up, that zeroes out right up against my blade of my saw. Okay, so then when I want to set this to cut my length of whatever I'm setting, what I'm going to do, and we had a length of that one was 0.997. I will get my gauge, and I will tell you, like I'm at 0.975 right there. The only thing that's going to affect, it's going to make my ring just a tad bigger than the one I was gonna, so it's not that you have to be dead on exact to the decimal point, but that's going to give you your measurement for how long your wedge is gonna be to make that 5-inch ring. Or your 7-inch ring is going to change whatever size ring you're making. Making sense? Then what I will do is set this here. So this opening is that. And what that did, this pulled this 0.9 inches away from my blade. So it's going to be riding. That is that 0.9 inches when I measure it out. And here again, kind of makeshift here, blade sitting here. And what I also did, I made this just to keep the pieces as I cut them falling away from the blade. I've got magnets on it, so it sets right down on my table saw. Here again, bandsaw you can do the same thing with. I've got it running right up at the edge of my saw. Then I will take my wood, and what I always do is, where did I leave my pencil over here? I will take my strips, and the other beauty of doing segmented, you can build this stuff with scrap. All of this stuff is scrap wood. I'm getting scrap wood pieces like this from cabinet shops up at Peach State Lumber. They got a whole wall full of this stuff, and they call it their lunch money. You go up there and get 10 or 12 4-foot strips that are about this wide. Sometimes they'll be a little wider. You can find oak, maple, whatever. And one of the Mexican workers, no, deal there, but one of the workers will come up. Okay, so what all you need? He said, I don't know. How about this? What'd you take for it? I don't know. $30? I can't afford $30. How about $20? Okay. And it's what they call their lunch money. So it's the scrap stuff that they can't really sell as board foot stuff, but they're selling it, and the company knows it. Peach State knows that that's what they're doing. It gives them a little extra money, and they put it in a lunch money fund, so they get free lunch every day. So, but anyway, I will take and mark the top with just a pencil, just drawing some pencil lines down it, and mark one edge of your piece. Then when I get ready to cut it, once I have set my blade, and typically what I do is I line this thing up. There's a center line on the wedge itself, and I have drawn a center line on my board. I like to, on a lot of my stuff, make them pure so the angle is the exact same on both sides, giving me that total 22.5. So I line the center of my wedge with the center line on my sled. And by the way, there are people out there that are selling pre-made sleds if you want to buy one. They run, generally I see them, they're $120 to $150. I made this one, knobs and everything, for about $30. So was kind of a no-brainer because I had the table saw and it wasn't a big deal to make it. Had the router to cut the things. But here again, there's directions off Jerry Bennett's website to get there. So once you set your sled up, take your wood, come in on either of the two angles. You'll find some people will use the same side all the time and they keep flipping their board back and forth. Well, I have found if I line up my wedge direct center of my sled, I can just work back and forth. So I'll line up, I'll come over to my stop block, so I'm firm on my stop block once I've cut my first angle, and I'm gonna run it through my saw. This piece is gonna drop off to the side after it cuts. It's gonna hit that and fall off to the side. I'm gonna come back, and then I take and move to the back side. Come back, line up so I get my piece length. I'm gonna run that one through. I'm gonna come back to this one and run this one through. And I will just stand there and cut all 16 pieces at one time. Now I've got 16 pieces ready to go and glue up a ring. I personally like to do all my table saw work at one time. So if I'm gonna be working, these are bowls from some freezer food. I've got them numbered. So there's number one. It's got my 16 pieces. I change my calculation. I know this is still set because my next ring's 16 pieces. My next ring is going to be 6 inches in diameter. So 6 inches times pi divided by the 16 segments tells me what my length of my next ring needs to be for each individual piece. So I'll set my caliper up for whatever that length is. I will readjust my stop block. It's going to make that ring naturally a little bit larger. And I'll run 16 more pieces through. Take my calculation, reset, run my next one, and then I've got 6 bowls filled. Now I can go over and start gluing them up. If you want, and you can see some people can get wild on what they do, instead of saying perfectly lined up, if you want to change your angle, I mean, it's still going to be a 16-degree ultimate angle, or a 16 piece at 22.5 degrees. You can line this thing up this way. And what that's going to do, it's going to give you a steep angle on one side of your wedge and a shallow angle on the other, and it's just going to change the outer look of the outer face of it. And what I've done, just to give you an idea, and I painted them so you can see the angle change different on each one of the rings. So you may, on your top of a bowl, you want it to be a little feature instead of exact. You may use that for the top of your bowl. And it just gives you a different flavor on the top rather than just all straight up. Questions, comments?
You're lining up basically though, have an end grain on the outside all the time, right?
No, your end grain is on the outside of each wedge.
Well, that's right.
That's the other beauty of this. This whole thing, when we turn it, I'm turning side grain on the whole thing. And everybody knows side grain's much easier to deal with than end grain, right? The other thing, this, even if I go by dimensional lumber, and I've made so many of these that I can tell you a 1x7, 24 inches long, will make 6 rings at 7-inch rings, which is what I use for beads courage. So how much is that 1x7, 24 inches long going to cost you? $10? If you go to, the big box store, and then you cut a couple discs, if in the case of beads of courage, cut a couple discs 7 inches. Okay, so we got a 4-foot board. I made this whole box with a 4-foot board. Cost me $20, $25 if I bought it somewhere. How much is a solid block going to cost? Or how long are you going to have to wait for the wood to dry before you can actually turn it? Or you turn it wet, put it on the shelf, hope like heck it doesn't crack when you get through, when it's finished drying, but it's going to sit there for a year and a half before you can ever do anything with it. So is it tedious gluing rings? Yeah, but it still doesn't take as long as the wood to dry. And it didn't cost me near as much either. Yes, sir.
When you're gluing them up, you're using a jig to hold them together while they're drying?
Yes, and that's where we're going next.
Oh, sorry.
I'm kind of stepping through the process and trying to make sure we kind of cover. Everybody okay with where we're at? Questions, comments? The other somewhat jig you're going to make is something similar to the press that I've made here. Here again, everybody does it different. That's a Walmart cutting board. Get them for about $10. The rest of it is MDF. That's just a threaded rod from Home Depot or Lowe's. And I made this one because everybody was saying, oh no, you just stack your rings and you glue them. So they're taking a ring, and we'll go through this process too, and then glue the next ring on and glue the next ring on. And they're stacking them up and putting them on a press. What I found when you do that is they tend to do this. So I've come up with my own way of doing it. I'm still using this, but I'm just using it as I'm building individual rings. So when you get ready to build a ring, and if everybody wants to see the entire gluing process, I brought glue, I'll glue it up, we'll press it, or I'll simulate the glue if y'all want to save a few minutes. Up to y'all, I do it either way. How are we running on time?
7:05, isn't it?
7:05?
Yep.
Tell you what, let's do. Let me show you how I glue a ring rather than physically glue it. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah. Everybody's used glue. I use Type Bond 2. If I'm dealing with large numbers of rings or a large number of segments, I may go to 3 because you get a little more work time. So what I've got here should be my 16 pieces. And what you'll do after you cut them on your saw, I have made a couple of sanding boards. I'll take a minute, get the fuzzies off. Typically what I will do, particularly for beads of courage, I cut probably 500 wedges at a time. I fill shoe boxes full of wedges, and I'm just standing there just all cutting for quite a while because they're all the exact same size, so it doesn't matter. And then I will carry them. My wife and I go camping a lot. I will carry them, so while we're sitting at a campground, and, we're talking, and I'm sitting watching the bobber in the water, waiting on the bite. Huh?
Not me.
I'm shooting deer, I'm not worried about putting
Okay.
stick in there.
Camping.
But here again, another good old Walmart cutting board. I found these are great glue boards because they clean off real easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my 16 pieces, line them up. And here again, this is a 7-inch ring designed for beads of courage. Another few rings. I knew I was looking short. And after I have kind of taken a minute to kind of clean the fuzzies off, I lay them down, kind of get them all together. And here again, 1,001 different ways. Talk to everybody and you get different things. Some people get big hose clamps, screw type hose clamps. I've seen people use big rubber bands. I've seen people use zip ties. This one was designed, and I stole it from Earl Small. His name is also on your thing. It's what he calls his guillotine. Basically, I just took a piece of oak, drilled a hole down through the middle, tapered it a little bit, and I'm using kind of a nylon-based cord. What I'm going to do is I lay my ring out. I hope I'm staying to where the camera can see me. And when you're using this, you always want to make sure that you have your clamp at a joint. You do not want it out off to the side. You want it sitting on a joint. If you have your clamp right on the middle of a wedge, it's going to try to push it more into the center. And I will sit and kind of work them around. And then I will use and tighten my guillotine. And get through there. And as I start getting it a little snug, I'm just gonna kind of work around, make sure I'm getting everything lined up. I'm gonna get my cord in the middle. I'll make sure I get it flat, and once I have it all flattened out, I wanna check and make sure I'm getting a good fit all the way through. I found flashlights are fantastic. And I will just work the flashlight around the outside edge while looking to see if I'm getting any daylight coming through any of my joints. If I'm getting any daylight, I'll mark that one, I'll pull it out, I'll hit it a little bit on the sandpaper if I need to. What you can also do at sometimes is take it out and just flip it over. And it will seat up better. But what you want here again, no cracks in any of your joints. Once I know that's good, I break it back apart, and then I put glue on each individual piece, rub them, and I'll build the whole ring before I put the clamp on it. There are some people, if they're building a 16 piece, they'll build half moons. They'll glue up 8, and then they'll glue up 8 more, wait for them to dry and fit them together. My luck does not run that way, because when I try to fit them together, they're never gonna line up. And I know if I'm doing it this way, I know immediately if they're gonna be lining up. Questions? I mean, do I need to actually glue it? Because I can gladly glue it. I'm gonna be gluing it tomorrow if I don't glue it tonight, because it's the last ring for this bowl right here. But once I've glued and I snug this up, now what I'll do is here's where I will use my press. I just use wax paper so it doesn't stick too bad. I'll drop that down there, put me another piece of wax paper on the top. Put my top piece on. I'll run it down, and now I'll snug it down a little bit. All that's doing is making sure they are as flat as possible, and the closer you get them in thickness as you're getting ready to cut up, I usually run everything through my table saw, so I've got the right thickness, throughout every piece. But I'll just give them a tap, snug it a little, tighten my guillotine a little, so I'm pulling it good and tight both this way and this way, sandwiching it down, and I'll let it sit in this for about an hour. There are people out there that says, oh no, if you're using Tite Bond glue, 15 minutes and you can go ahead and pull it out and move it to something else. I'm not in that big a hurry, because typically what I'm doing when I set this one in, I'm getting my next 16 pieces, sanding down, checking those, making sure they're fitting good. I've got a second guillotine that I'll go ahead and guillotine them up. And then what I will also do, once I guillotine them and I know, okay, these are fitting right, I'll take my pencil and number 1, 2, 3 around the ring. Therefore, if they get shuffled out somewhere, I can put them right back in the same spot. And if I'm still waiting on this, I'll go over and start turning something else, because what I'll do is I'll build all of my rings at one time in the same day or over a 2-day period, but I'm going back and forth working on something else while I'm waiting on glue to dry, rather than stand around. Then, once you get all of your rings built, then you can go into and start assembling your bowl itself. And what I will do, the first thing is I will go to my lathe and I will cut and get my mortise cut in it. And when I'm cutting the mortises, when I'm getting ready to do this, I will take it just strictly on the lathe and I'm gonna be on the back side of these, but I'm just gonna bring it straight up with my live center, and I just set it right up against there. And when you lock that down and you snug this up, just to cut a mortise, you don't need to have a spur drive on this side. That's gonna hold it tight enough to where it's not gonna be a problem. Has not been for me. If you wanna put your drive center in, the only reason I don't put a drive center is obviously I'm gonna have the hole there, I'm gonna have the dimple there, and that's gonna be something else I'm gonna have to cut out and sand out of there or whatever. Make sense? Then, once I get my rings built, and I have my rings, they all need to be sanded flat. Now, a couple different ways you can sand them flat. What I used worked great, and with financial status at the time, I could not justify, I couldn't justify buying a drum sander. So I used my cold jaws. I'll put my ring in a cold jaw, snug it down, fire up my lathe, and I'm not gonna sand in here because it'll make a mess. Just hold that flat up against it, stop, feel it, okay, still got a little bit. Take a pencil maybe while it's spinning, do some pencil lines around, and sand that side flat, flip it around, do the same thing on the next one. And then I'll grab my next ring and I'll go ahead and sand all 6 rings, if it's a 6-ring bowl that I'm building. And here again, it's, you know, when the paper gets bad, you peel it off, get some more glue, you know, clean it up a little bit, glue another piece of sandpaper on there. In fact,
What grit do you use on that?
I've got 220 here, depending on what I'm gonna take off of it. I got an 80 grit board and I got a 120 board. So here again, depending on how well, you know, I did on getting everything as close to flat as I can. If it's pretty flat, I'll jump straight to 220. 120 still works great. I've hit them with 120 and left them there. Because once again, you're gonna be stacking them on top of each other. Nobody's gonna see it anyway, right? And that is how you get your rings built. And it's just quickly using the cold jaw. Now, when it comes to building it, that's when we get a little different, and I've got one partially built just strictly to save time, because I'm gonna switch over to the other lathe in a minute and show you the turning of it. But I typically, once I get everything sanded, I've sanded the front side of my base that everything's gonna glue up to, sanded it the same way while it's in here, hold my board up. When I go to build mine, gluing them up, here again, I have found that they slip for me, plus I can't glue it on the base at that time. So I go ahead and glue direct to my base. And what I will do to keep them from moving around, this cannot be used while turning. Stress that. There is no bearing in that. That is solid. It will not, when you go into the tailstock and you put that on and spin it, it ain't gonna work. Okay, so it is strictly for this. The good news is it only costs about 15 bucks. I think is what I paid for that at Penn State. And here again, it's got a Morris taper. It's one inch. So I can now put my glue on, lock that down, line it up, turn it, get my joints lined up like I want, crank that bad boy down, it ain't going nowhere. I will typically, having one lathe only, once you do this, you're down for an hour till the glue dries. Okay? So what I will typically do, gluing my pieces together, assembling my bowl, that's usually the last thing I do in the shop for the day. I'll go down there and I'll glue one ring on, clamp it down. Hour or so later, whenever I think about it, gonna go have dinner, after dinner, hey, I'm gonna run downstairs and I'll go ahead and glue another ring. You know, hour or two later, if I'm still up and won't come glue another ring, I'll glue another ring. When I get finished product, all 6 rings put together, I'm gonna let that sit. Anytime I'm gonna turn something, I let it sit overnight. That's just, I wanna make dang sure everything's dried up good before I start spinning it. The other thing I have found for me personally, you may not have problems, when I'm going that deep into something, I struggle with that bottom end and getting my bottom flat. And here again, the beauty of segmented is you don't have to do it. Because what I do and what I have done here and what I'm fixing to go do with what's left here is I glue my first 2 rings on, and now I go turn the inside of these 2 rings. Now I got plenty of room, I can get in here and work real easy, and do what I need to do. Once I get that, now I'm gonna stack another couple rings, or maybe I will go ahead, in fact, the inside of this one, if I can pass it around, everybody look, I've already turned the bottom 2 rings in that. In fact, I have turned the bottom 4 rings in there. Pretty close to finished product. So I've only got this depth to go in to clean up the rest of the insides. And I just found that works better and easier for me anyway. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna jump over here right quick. And just here again, I know everybody in here has turned lots before, but I'm not gonna be it. I won't break my back. I just personal choice, the wood doesn't care. I like using my bowl gouge for this. Technically, you can use a special gouge because you're cutting in grain or side grain. So it's not a big deal. Here again, the wood makes no difference. It doesn't care what it is. I've just found that I just feel more comfortable with my bowl gouge, a little more beef to it and everything. So I go in with my bowl gouge and kind of work this inside and work that bottom and get it to where I feel pretty comfortable that once I start putting my other rings on, I'm gonna be able to deal with what's left on the bottom end. And here again, first time on this lathe, so I might take an adjustment period. And then I will also use bottom bowl gouge, where it's got about a 60-degree angle on it. So it works better coming across the bottom, and that's where I don't want to leak, so I'm gonna take that out. Yeah, I'll get that somebody up there.
You're doing the structure first, too.
And just taking a look, and here again, if you need, or if you feel the need, I typically try not, I don't do a whole lot with the outside now, because I want, as I build this thing out further, I want a little more mass to keep it from having so much vibration. Once I get the inside done and all my rings stacked, then I'll come back and do the outside. So I try to just get my inside even. You can go in and measure and see how much you've got left, on a particular wedge. So I've still got plenty of room to clean that outside, can even clean up some of the inside. But as soon as I get those bottom two rings feeling about like I want them, as far as the smoothness and the corner coming down and turning into the bowl itself, I'm good. I don't need to go any further. What I will typically do, and I didn't get it out, is I'll use a scraper on the bottom just to clean the bottom up a little bit, kind of help me with not quite as much sand in there. Raise up just a little bit. This one just helped me get into that corner a little bit better, so I can kind of turn the corner with it. And I will purposely not turn all the way out to the outer side of this one. And here again, we can pass this one around, everybody can look at it. I've got a little divot in here, it goes in just a little bit. I like leaving my outer ring as thick as I can get it, as wide as I can get it, for when I glue that next one on, just give a little more. I'm gonna turn it away anyway, but I'll stack a couple more rings on, and then I'll turn, and then I'll stack another couple rings on, and I'll turn. So it may be a 3-day process to put it together, because I'll do this one night. Next morning I'll come in and clean this up. I can go ahead, if I want to start, now that I have a second lathe, I can start going ahead and stacking them up and, putting them all together. But I would just wait till till that afternoon, stack another couple rings on the next morning, go back and clean it off for next time in the shop, go back and turn those two, and then move right on down the line. I think it's Steve that says, how do you know when your tool needs sharpening? When your grinder quit turning, it's time to go back over and turn it on and resharpen again. So I think that's the quote, isn't it?
Basically a quote from Peggy Schmidt, but yeah, I've heard it from me.
But, and here again, so that's the basic starting, of building one out. And then here again, it's just a matter of, once again, I'm gonna go over it the evening, and I'm gonna stack another ring, and then another ring an hour or so later. And then I'm ready to, turn those out, or I'm ready to finish it up. Like I've got this one over here. Oh, you wanna pass that around? It's not the smoothest yet, because once again, I know I'm gonna go back in there, you know, and make those final cuts. I'm just getting it close to what it should be. And that's the basics of doing it now. It's just simple turning. And I've got this one's all oak, where that one is cherry on the bottom, first two rings are maple, the next two ring are the cherry on the bottom, then two maple rings. It's going to have two cherry rings and then two maple rings when I get it finished, and then it'll have a cherry top and a cherry knob when it goes, or a maple knob when it goes out.
Well, do you wait to turn the outside in until you're finished with the entire glue up?
I wait until I'm finished with the entire glue up. I've entirely turned the inside before I start doing the outside. And here again, I think, you know, this one, I haven't trued these outside rings. I can certainly go ahead and do that. You know, get them down. Well, what I do when I get ready to do the outside, because I do not want to have that vibration, is I will use this with my live center and bring my tailstock up, and that way it's going to cut down on the vibration. So you're able to get better cuts and less vibration when you're doing the outside. And here again, that's a scrap of probably Home Depot or Lowe's 2x6, but it works perfect for this.
I found a tip years ago that I thought was totally nuts when I first read it, but I tried it and it works for solving the slippy slideys. A little pinch, literally just a tiny little pinch of salt, and it locks it right in.
Here again, I have heard the same thing, and I keep saying, well, y'all give it a shot, you know?
You
But
don't use much, you just a tiny, tiny little bit. I've never had it cause any problem with the glue joints.
okay. And I certainly appreciate hearing that again, because I do remember hearing that in the past. I've just never done it. And if that's the way you want to do it, that's fine. You can use the press like I've made it, and you can build every ring you've got, you know, and then put your top and bottom on it, you know, or put your bottom on it. And then if you're going to make, you know, a lidded box, you can put the lidded box. If you're making a bowl, you can build the whole thing other than just put your base on there.
Do you put the glue on there first and then just sprinkle a little salt?
Yeah, because then you can see when it hits the salt, you kind of see how much you're doing.
Maybe a salt shaker.
No, that's too much. No, I just take a little tiny pinch and just do one of those.
Mhm.
It was amazing.
I never heard of that. That was
I have seen that on the Segmented Sites website, Facebook page, where people have talked about that. I've just personally never tried it. But hearing it again from somebody I know, I may give it a shot now.
So do you just eyeball the offset on each one of these, where you go half a segment off?
Where I build it, like would be building a block wall. I have my next joint centered in the last one,
Right, but you just eyeball it.
and I'm just eyeballing. There are people that talk about how they sit and they will draw pencil lines and everything, and you know, I'm probably not the best at it, but when you look at this, it's probably pretty close. And you're not paying, once you turn it out, you don't see those joints too much anyway.
People see what they think they're supposed to see.
Well, and that's true.
They won't notice, so.
The other thing that here again, depending on how creative you want to be, and I was here again in this particular thing, I'm talking, trying to stay pretty basic since we hadn't glued this one up yet. Probably about that reason that I didn't glue it, because I didn't show you this when I was here earlier. Just something else to think about if you want to vary, where I've done nothing but solid rings. The other thing, like the bowl I did over there, I cut various types of wood. I've done a ton of beads of courage boxes that way, to where it's just whatever scrap wood I've got, I'm running them through, I'm cutting them all the exact same size anyway. So I just have the box, and I just reach over and grab a handful of ring wedges, I don't care what color they are, set them out there and line them up and grab them until I get my 16, and it's just a mixture going all the way throughout the whole box. You can do it that way. I've seen people that do patterns to where they're stacking colors up in odd shapes. And I tell you, just gluing 16-piece rings together at one time, it's a handful. And try 48 and getting 48 pieces set and put in and clamped before your glue starts drying out. You gotta work pretty quick.
Were you up there when, Wayne Johnson showed the piece he had done
No,
at, Atlanta?
I did not see it. I've seen,
I think it was like 1,500 pieces. And he did a hummingbird, remember Gary, hummingbird, right in the middle, but he had a pattern all in, the pattern was probably about 18 inches around, but he had a pattern, and then he had a hummingbird right in the middle of it. I think, well, he got too much time on him.
I mean, it's like saying, you see some of these things and they're 2,000-3,000. It was 3,000 pieces. And then, of course, you can get into doing open segments. I have not gotten into that, but an open segment, you would have your ring pieces, and I don't know if I can hold them good, but you got gaps in between them. And you're building rings with gaps every other one. And here again, here, Jerry Bennett, I keep calling on him, and Earl Small. They're probably two that have got YouTube channels that, show that, and there are, here again, more tools that you can get. Another thing a lot of people will do, they will take and say, this is going to be my piece that I'm going to be cutting my wedges out of. They will take a different color wood and go ahead and glue it on there. So now, when you stack the rings up, you got something that looks like this. So it almost looks like the mortar in your brick joints. You can also take pieces and go this way. So you're stacking them up this way. So here again, just giving some different color contrast in there. And simple to do. Once again, if you're going to do the whole ring is going to have this one narrow feature on it, go ahead and glue it up to your stock before you cut your wedges, and now it's already built for you. If you want to make wedges or pieces to go in between your wedges, to where you're winding up with something like that, all you're going to do, you're going to figure your ring the same way. You're going to measure your 5-inch diameter ring. I'm going to cut my wedge 9 point whatever, or 0.9 whatever. And then if you add this in there like that, you're going to increase your ring diameter by, what is that, 1/8 of an inch times 16. But if you want to keep your ring diameter the same, what you do is you subtract it off. Subtract an 1/8 of an inch off of your ring length or your wedge length. And then when you add this piece to it, and it doesn't have to be cut in an angle, it's just straight up, because you're not changing the angle, you're just adding to the length. So you can change and do that also. That's, once again, more glue. Now instead of 16 pieces you're putting together, you put 32 pieces together.
But you only have to glue on each side on every other one, because then when you put the plain one in between there, it still shows the break.
Or you could go, to 2 rings.
Yeah.
In a color. Like I say, variation is unlimited. It's only what your mind and you're willing to put up with when you start assembling these
Have
things.
you ever done any with end grain showing?
I have not. I picked up segmented turning at a wood turning meeting back when we were meeting Woodcraft. Started doing it about 4 or 5 years ago. And I have found that I'm doing more segmented in Deeds of Courage than I am anything else. I have made some bowls, I've made the lamp and, some other stuff, kind of requested items, but I haven't tried it. What I have also seen though, here again, another thought, is plywood. Using plywood, and that will give you a pretty thing. What you're gonna find out though, well, you've got to get some good Baltic birch or finished plywood to do it, so you don't have the voids. You are going to add a tremendous amount to the weight of that item. Plywood is a whole heck of a lot heavier than maple or walnut or anything like that. When Randy Willis, some of you probably know and remember Randy, he's the one that did a demonstration and kind of got me started on it. And he brought in one and he was passing around some of the bowls he did. And y'all feel free to go up and take handle, fool, whatever, with that stuff up there, or any of this. I want you asking questions. But he did one out of plywood, and you're picking up and you're looking at this bowl and passing it on down, and then all of a sudden, plywood bowl when you grab it, because it probably weighed at least 3 or 4 pounds more than a regular bowl, just because of the weight of plywood.
Yeah,
Question?
if you look at Brian Diz, there's a Facebook group called Second Wind Bowls.
Yep.
And there's a guy on there now that he's on ring 23 with a total of 5,113 pieces.
So people are doing rings with,
It's called massive.
in fact, yes.
Yes, there is.
Like I say, I think, and I can jump on SegEasy.com right quick and take a look. I think he makes wedges for up to 90-something pieces in a ring. And like I say, I bought these 4 sizes, and that one is my go-to, the 16.
No, I think he is married. Maybe I'll get you yours on as soon as I finish this.
Questions, comments, thoughts, anything?
Okay, the next stage is making actually a bowl that's got a curve in it. Like say,
All you're gonna do is change your ring diameters as you're going up. If you look at the lamp,
yeah.
the lamp has some curvature to it.
Well, I was looking,
And-
didn't you do a bowl?
Could you do a bowl like
Well,
that?
I thought you did.
Well, there's a bowl, but the bowl is just angled up.
Oh, okay.
But here again, if you'll look, let's see, I think this is the back one. On, this is the lamp that's over there. That was my drawing for the lamp. And you can see how the ring diameter's changed. You can also see how I figured over here on the side, I'm making, one ring that's all pieces are 0.785. I'm making 4 that are 834. So when I got over there, I could cut, and here again, I was filling up rings number, 124 or whatever. So here again, it's all depends on how you want to configure your rings. And that's why I sit down, sketch it out on a piece of paper, sketch it out on some graph paper, and then figure out what's your ring diameters for each ring going up, allowing yourself, enough stagger when you put your rings together
That
you've got enough room to cut. I've got a bowl at home that started out just like the big bowl over there, but it's only this deep. and I think you can figure out what happened to it. It started out this deep, and it got a little bit thin in one area, and, I wound up putting a new bottom on it, and it just made a shallow hole.
You're not supposed to say that. That's the way I'm playing
Exactly.
Design opportunities.
it. Tell on yourself.
So if you didn't want to invest in the wedgies and you just wanted to try segmented, you could just use like a 30, 60, 90 triangle, right?
Use a 30 degree from a 30, 60, 90, 30 degree, that'll give you 12 pieces. 12 individual blocks. So you could very easily do that. Like I say, if you've got a good miter gauge for your saw that you feel is pretty accurate, and here again, that's the key. The angle is what needs to be real accurate. This can vary a little bit as long as each segment is that same length. So when you figure out 9.90, you can go ahead and make it 1.0, and it's just gonna make your ring diameter change by that much. You know, so that's not the big one, as long as you get every wedge in that ring that same size. And that's where, the first time I did one like this, I ran into the problem because you have to put them in. If you look at this close, and I'll pass it around the room and you can look at it. If you'll look, the lengths of these are different lengths. The red ones are one length, the black ones are another, but they were done on that sled just like it's set up now. This one, when I cut from this side, the wedge is a little bit longer. When you cut from this side, the wedge is a little bit shorter. You put them in the right order, you're going to get your correct ring diameter. But if you get them out of order, you'll never get them put together because you're going to wind up with gaps and everything else. So you have to pay attention to what you're doing on that. And it's one of the reasons that, and I guess I didn't say this, where I marked the side, because if I'm cutting with this side facing me on this wedge, when I slide it up to here, now my drawing line is facing in a different direction when you're going back and forth. So then when you go to lay them out, you're laying them out to where on the inside of the ring, when you're looking around the inside of the ring, you'll see the line on this one. The line will be on the outside of this one. It'll be on the inside of this one, the outside of this one. That helps you put those rings together in the right order coming around, to where you're getting them every other one, since they are varied lengths.
Sig Easy does up to 288 segments.
288 segments. So you Googled it from back there or went there?
I went to the website.
Yeah. But like I say, and he will show you how you can, once you get the rings cut, as long as that angle's right, you can mix and match in any fashion you want to mix and match them, and they're still going to come out with the right ring. You can swap them out as long as you swap out in same numbers. You know, I'm gonna pull this wedge out, and we'll put this color wedge in, or this wedge that's got a little bit different angle. But it can be a lot of fun. It can be, tedious. You gotta be willing to sit down and, when you're doing them, but I find it relaxing. And it keeps me in the workshop longer too.
I think the doing them in quarters or halves that you mentioned comes from back in the days when we didn't have as accurate of machines. And it was almost impossible to get that whole ring to fit first time. And so they would build them in halves, and then if they didn't fit together quite right, they would sand them on your little sanding block to get them both to fit. They wouldn't be absolutely the same as everything else, but they were supposed to be able to.
As close as you could get at the time.
And so, with kind of a poor man's segmenting, you can still do it that way and don't have to have all the equipment that you might have to have if you got into a team.
And like I say, if you've got there are people out there, and I don't know, mine won't. There are people out there claiming they are cutting wedges using their chop saws. And I'm just trying to think, I'm not sure my angles on my chop saw are going to quite give me exactly what I
If
need
you got,
there,
if you
but
got a way to set, if you got a way to set the angle, it'll be just as consistent.
as long as you don't get any movement out of it, you know, and that's the other thing you do have to be careful of, is you're not getting any wobble in the saw blade.
Or your finger don't get caught in that.
Yeah. And there are people out there that, you know, say when you cut these, your line on the top, you should have one facing up, the next one facing down. So you're flipping every other one over to take up for any kind of slack you could have between the two. I found that for me personally, if I line up good on my 90-degree center line on here with my wedge, it doesn't matter. I can throw them all in a box and grab any one, put it together, and come up with a ring that at most will take just a little hit on the sanding board and straighten it up. Maybe I've been lucky, and I know whatever I cut and do next week is gonna totally be all screwed up. Just because I said that tonight that I had investigated it. I'll probably have a ring explode when I go to turn one of these too. But I do recommend either the sanding block like I used, do not, I will say, do not, everybody doing it will tell you, do not take one of these wedges and run it through your planer.
That's a no-no.
You will have about 16 or more missiles flying out the other end. So never try to run them through a planer. Plane your boards, and if you got some boards and they're really mismatched, in fact, depending on what kind of scrap I've got and everything, I have run through the joiner, run it through the planer, get everything all perfect, you know, flatness and all, nothing wrong with that. But don't try to put one of those push up rings.
Plus it's hard on the knives, it moves hard on the knives.
Yep. So, anything else? No? Everybody good?
Yep.
Either good and confused or
No,
decided already, nah, I ain't gonna get into all that.
Yeah, a project we might try.
But seriously, if anybody has any questions or anything, come talk to me, call me, I'll give you my phone number if you haven't already got it. Whatever, I'll certainly help you.